Hello everybody, this is Zach with Top Deck Nation. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. Normally I have seen a lot of people do deck profile videos, including myself. If you haven't seen that Mega Rayquaza metal deck, definitely check it out. I just posted it earlier today. But today we're actually going to be starting a brand new series called Pro Deck Building 101. And basically what that means is that we're going to take a deck idea, and instead of just showing a deck profile and like a finished product, I'm actually going to walk you through kind of my mindset of building the deck and the strategy and the steps that go along with that. And then we take the finished product and actually test it in a game and see how it does in competitive play. So today we are going to be looking at Yveltal-Archeops. If you're not familiar with it, it's a very popular expanded deck. It actually, I believe, placed second at this at the most recent Berlin Arena Cup, which is similar to like a regionals. But it was using that black and white on expanded format, so that was a good testing ground for that deck, and it was able to place second. So that kind of tells you that it's definitely a competitive deck. But anyway, we are just gonna just kind of talk about the steps it takes to kind of build a deck, and whether you're a new player and you don't really know how to build a deck, that'll be awesome. That'll kind of teach you how to jump into the Pokemon card game and build a deck for yourself, or whether you're a veteran player and you're just kind of looking kind of to sharpen your deck building skills, or just to kind of get into the shoes of another player just to see how they do it. Either way, this is a great video for you, so we will go ahead and get started here. So, um, you know, what I like to do is normally kind of break it down into a few steps when I'm building a deck. The first step I want to think about is, I want to think about the overall strategy of the deck. So, think about that overall strategy of the deck and how can I achieve that strategy. So there's a couple things going on with this deck, right? One strategy I have is I want to be really aggressive. I want to be hitting with Yveltal, Seismitoad, things like that. They're all, they do have some synergy. They are all hitting pretty hard. A lot of times they utilize that Hypnotoxic Laser in Burbank City Gym to do a lot of damage. So, I want to kind of speed through my deck and be as aggressive as possible, taking those knockouts really quickly. Something else I want to do though is I want to take advantage of Archeops. For those of you who don't know, Archeops is a pretty interesting card. It was introduced in the Noble Victory set a few years ago, but Archeops lets you basically block evolution cards from being played. So he has that ancient power ability that says each player cannot play any Pokemon from his or her hand to evolve his or her Pokemon. So that's a pretty strong strategy. It's a pretty incredible ability actually. Up until this point, Archeops wasn't that playable because if you look up in the corner, yes, it's a stage 1, but it evolves from Archon, and Archon is actually what you might call a fossil Pokemon. It's a restored Pokemon, and what that means is that you actually have to use the Plume Fossil to search, I believe, the bottom 7 cards of your deck to get the Archon out. So it makes it a little bit difficult to actually pull that off. So, how in the world are we going to pull this off if we have to do, like, fossils and, Archon and stuff like that? Wouldn't that just kind of, fill your deck up pretty quickly and make it kind of inconsistent and clunky? Well, to answer your question, yeah, it normally would. But since this is a speed deck, we can actually focus on, using a particular card that's going to let us get that Archeops out. And that card is going to be Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick. So this is pretty cool. This card was introduced in, I believe it was Primal Clash. I could be wrong, but I think it's Primal Clash. But yeah, Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick. You can only play it if it's the last card in your hand. So you can't just put it down and bring out an Archeops out. But what you can do is you can put a fighting Pokemon from your discard onto your bench. So that's pretty cool. You can get like a stage 1, a stage 2 without having to evolve. You can even get a Mega Evolution, so like a Mega Lucario-EX, for example. But adding to that, once you put the Pokemon on the bench, you actually get to draw 5 cards. So, assuming you can get this off turn 1, you're off to a pretty impressive start. You have Archeops, you've blocked evolutions completely in play, And you also get to draw 5 cards. So off those 5 cards, you may get some more Pokemon. You may get a Shaman to draw more cards. So very good card. So that is the overall strategy. I want to max these Hidden Ball Trick to get an Archeops out turn 1. Turn 2 at the latest, but really turn 1, because if you think about it, the format is so fast that if you just give your opponent an extra turn, it's probably too late at that point. They're probably going to put out a Mega at that point, or Stage 1 or something like that. So, we want to get that out as quick as possible. So, after we have that strategy going, after we have, the strategy and, how we're going to get that strategy, we really have to think, what has synergy with that strategy? How can we make it work here? So, in this case, you want to speed through the deck, right? You want to kind of burn through cards, thin down your hand. So, in that case, we would probably play something like Battle Compressor, which kind of lets you just, discard cards from your deck. So that will be very useful on here. It lets you search up to 3 cards, so you have to choose one at a minimum, but up to 3 cards, and that's going to kind of help you battle compress the Maxi, the Archeops, whatever it be that you need that particular turn. So let's go ahead and just kind of build a really rough skeleton. Probably not even playable in its current state, but we will just kind of build it and see where we go from here. So I'm just kind of thinking to myself, I do need an Archeops in the deck, so let's start off with one Archeops, because not a lot of people actually play evolutions, right? There are Megas, there are Stage 1s and Stage 2s, but a lot of people are still kind of relying on those big basic attackers. And, why blame them? They're very efficient attackers, they can hit for 1 or 2 energy, you don't have to waste any deck space with like Spirit Links or Megas or anything. So we'll start off with one Archeops, use it as kind of like a sub-strategy, if you will. So I will go ahead and put a couple of baby Yveltals in here. This Oblivion Wing attack, attach a dark energy from your discard to one of your bench Pokemon. This is pretty awesome because I can battle compress dark energies, I can Ultra Ball dark energies, and use Oblivion Wing, so it has some synergy there. So I'm going to put a couple in there. So if we're playing the baby Yveltal-EX, we definitely have to play at least a couple of the, the big daddy Yveltal-EX, if you will. So I'm going to play a couple of those guys. You could play 3. A lot of Yveltal decks play 3, but, we may have some other attackers in here, so we don't have to necessarily, clunk our deck up here. So, since we are playing a dark deck, Darkrai would have to be a must. Darkrai gives you free retreat with that Dark Cloak ability, so probably play 1 of him. I have seen people play 2, but we'll start off with 1 just to see how it goes. And then as for your kind of support Pokemon, we want to draw through cards. So, Shaman definitely played as kind of a 2 or a 3 of in every deck, so I'll play a couple of those. I want to play something that can actually search out the Maxi's Hidden Ball Trick or another supporter if need be. So, in that case, we've got Jirachi-EX. Stellar Guidance lets you search your deck for a supporter and put it in your hand. So, for example, if I've already battle compressed the Archeops away, I can simply Ultra Ball for the Jirachi and just go ahead and get the Maxi out, and there we go. Alright, so it's starting to look pretty good. Since we play a lot of EXs here, I'm thinking to myself, why not play something that can search those EXs? Ultra Balling for Jirachi is pretty cool, but I can also Ultra Ball for Hoopa and kind of thin my deck down even further. So, Hoopa's Scoundrel Ring ability lets you search for up to 3 Pokemon EXs, except for Hoopa, and put those cards in your hand. So I can basically Ultra Ball for Hoopa, and then I can put the Hoopa down and search out Jirachi, Shaman, things like that. So definitely worth it as a 1 of. Alright, and then yeah, so we're pretty much done here. If we're just kind of thinking about what has synergy with this deck, a lot of these guys have double colorless attacks here. So, Shaman can Sky Return if necessary, but Yveltal is really your big attacker here with that Y Cyclone attack, and even Evil Ball. It does 20 times the number of energy on both Pokemon, both active Pokemon. So since we know that double colorless is going to be a must, and we're probably going to end up using something like lasers or something like that, definitely want to consider putting Seismitoad in here. Seismitoad is still a force to be reckoned with, especially in Expanded. It won the 2015 U.S. Nationals with, three-time world champ Jason Klasinski. So definitely a great deck there. It also got second at this past Worlds. Very strong strategy, just Quaking Punch, block these items, block your opponent's items, and it can really just kind of turn the tables on certain matchups, such as Night March, or anything that's really item reluctant. So, anything that's item reliant will struggle against Seismitoad. So, so we have our Pokemon here. This looks pretty good to me. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the energy. Definitely we're going to play 4 double colorless because we have so many guys that can take advantage of it. Not to mention if Hoopa or somebody gets active and stuck, we can always attach it since it has a 2 retreat cost and get out of it that way. And then as for dark energy, we want a decent amount to draw into, but we don't want to have so many that we're clunking our hands up. So, maybe 5, maybe 6. We can start off with 6 if something happens. If we find ourselves needing room for something else, we can definitely take one out. But we'll start off with 6 because, it's important that we go ahead and put those dark energies down the first turn. I'd rather not put the double colorless down because it could set you back if you get like Team Flare grunted or somebody plays a crushing hammer on you or enhanced hammer. So I'd rather just kind of play the dark energy my first turn, and that's just going to increase your chances here. So, at this point we are about halfway done, maybe about a third of the way done. So we need to move on to our trainers. This deck is going to be very reliant, I should say, on trainer cards. So we need to go ahead and jump into that. So what I like to do is I usually like to start off with my supporter line. And you might ask, why do you want to start with supporters? And that's just because really it's just kind of a habit, it's just kind of a preference, but I think once you have your supporter line established, you can kind of go on from there with your stadiums and your items. So it's just a good habit to kind of form. So we will move on to the supporters. So by far the best supporter in the format, I think the general consensus everyone would say, is Professor Juniper / Professor Sycamore. They do the same effect. Discard your hand, draw 7 cards. So I am going to put some Juniper in here. Do I need to play 4 Junipers? You could. Most decks do max out Juniper. In this deck, we can actually play a thinner supporter line just because we're playing so much trainer-based draw cards and cards like Shaman and Hoopa. So instead of 4, let's just put 3 for now. Another card that we want to play that's in the expanded format would actually be In, which lets you shuffle your hand back in and draw 6. This is pretty awesome considering, we play a lot of cards like Hypnotoxic Laser, Verbank City Gym, cards that we can't really afford to keep discarding because, if you don't know already, Lysander's trump card is, it's banned from play. As you can see there. But, we are just going to play In here. The question becomes, how many do you want to play? In this deck, since I do just want to keep drawing through cards, honestly, you can just play a couple. I can always Battle Compress In, I can always VS Seeker to get it back, so let's just play a couple starting off with. And then, something else I want to play is Lysander, just because, we want to bring up our opponent's Pokemon and just be as aggressive as possible. So, it's kind of like you're punishing your opponent for actually doing their strategy. So if they put down a Shaman, I want to Lysander that Shaman up, and I want to punish my opponent that way. I want to take 2 prizes really quickly. So I'm going to play 2 Lysander because simply, I don't want to prize my lone Lysander if I played 1. It would be horrible to have to prize it, so I just play 2 as kind of like a security measure there, just to make sure that I do draw into it when I need to. And then lastly, really the only thing we need is the Maxi. You can opt for cards like Chorus, which is definitely good, but they're not really a must-have in this deck because you play so many cards to draw through your deck, as we'll find out in just a minute. So, I'm going to play one hidden ball trick. It is our sub strategy. It's not our main strategy. It's awesome if we can do the turn one Archeops, but we don't have to. Being aggressive and having like the item lock and laser bank and things like that. That's really what we're counting on. So I'm just going to play one. I can always battle compress it. I can always search it out. So I think that should be good. So this is our supporter line. It looks really unorthodox because it's a really thin supporter line. If somebody would have shown me this maybe a year ago, I would have been like, you're crazy because, I want to max out my junipers. I want to max out my ends. I want to add a couple chorus. But this is all you need because we have so many other cards that we're about to see. So I'm going to move on to the stadium of this deck. And that's, we talked about toxic lasers, so we definitely want to play Burbank City Gym here. Burbank City Gym is going to allow us to add some residual damage from that poison. So question is, how many do you want to play? A lot of decks play 3 just so it's kind of like a counter stadium. In this deck we can actually just do 2 because as you're about to see, there are some ways to kind of add damage without Burbank. And just because it's kind of clunking your hand up. If you already have a Burbank in play, if you draw into another Burbank and then another Burbank, it's just really clunky and it's going to prevent you from, pulling off like the Maxi or, other strategies like that. So we'll just play 2. And with that, we're down to the item cards. So let's kind of think about what kind of item cards we want to do. So we think about, I want to think about the cards that I definitely want to play, that I know have to be in this deck. Otherwise, called the staples. The staples of the deck. What makes the deck work. So let's think about it. We definitely have to play Hypnotoxic Laser, so I want to go ahead and max those out. Something great about Hypnotoxic Laser is that you can just kind of play it from your hand whenever. Even if you don't really have to poison your opponent or something, you can just use it and it's basically subtracting a card from your hand and making it a little easier to play that Maxi's Hidden Ball trick. So we will play 4 of those, of course. Something else, this is an Yveltal deck, so why not take advantage of that and use something that has some synergy with it, something that's in Expanded that we don't have in that XY on standard format. And that's going to be Dark Patch. Dark Patch is huge because it lets me attach a basic Dark Energy from my discard to one of my bench Dark Pokemon. So I can power up Darkrai this way. I can power up Yveltal-EX this way. I can power up the baby Yveltal-EX, the baby Yveltal, the non-EX. So, great synergy there. Because I don't have a ton of attackers that are Dark type, I'm just going to play 3 of these. I don't want to play 4 because I don't want to open up with a Dark Patch and not really have a need to use it. So I'll play 3 of those. I think that's plenty considering we have lots of acceleration and low cost attackers here. Okay, so something else that I see that we probably want to play here is Ultra Ball. Most decks you want to Ultra Ball. You want to max out that Ultra Ball count. Ultra Ball has synergy because it can discard 2 cards from your hand. So it's going to help you get the Maxi off. It's going to help you discard Dark Energy to prepare for like a Dark Patch or an Oblivion Wing. So definitely max those out. Alright, so at this point we're in pretty good shape. Since we are playing a low amount of supporters, I want to make sure we max out our Verse Seeker count. Verse Seeker is awesome because it lets me basically reuse supporters. Put a supporter card from my discard into my hand. So that's why we are going to be playing 4 of that card in here. So it looks like we're about 3/4 of the way done. We've got 13 spots in the deck left. Let's kind of think about what else do we want to really accomplish here. We talked about the turn 1 Maxi. So we have to play a Battle Compressor. Battle Compressor is going to make that particular sub strategy work. In this case, you could play 4. You could definitely max it out. Just kind of maximize your chances. But again, because it is a sub strategy and because we have so many other cards that can discard already, like Ultra Ball and Computer Search, we can just play 3. I think 3 should be plenty. And then, like I said, speaking of Computer Search, we do need an A spec. Computer Search is probably one of the best A specs we can use in this deck, just because I can search out a single card. So anything, I can Computer Search for an Ultra Ball and really thin my hand down to nothing and just completely set up. It's such a great A spec. kudos to the Pokemon Company for bringing that back in Boundaries Crossed. Originally, I believe it was in the original base set. It's crazy because back then you could actually play 4 computer search, and that was a ridiculously fast format. But yeah, computer search is definitely a great card, so we're going to be playing that. All right, so we are down to 9 cards, it looks like. So we need some ways to kind of search through the deck and draw quickly. What comes to mind when I hear myself say that is probably going to be Acrobike. Acrobike lets me draw 2 cards and then discard one of those cards. So it's going to let me continually just draw extra cards every turn. So I'm going to play 3 of those. I don't really think we have to max it out because we've got some other ways to draw cards, but the Acrobike is definitely good. Especially if I draw a couple cards, one of those is like the Archeops, well, I can just discard the Archeops and get a free card, basically. Alright, another card that lets me search through my deck that way is Trainer's Mail. I can draw 4 cards, pick a trainer card, and then shuffle the rest of those back in there. So I keep that 1 trainer card in my hand. So that's going to be awesome because, we're playing a thin supporter line, lots of items and stuff, so that's going to help you get those cards when you need them. And for the same reason as Acrobike, I'm going to put in 3 of those as well. Alright, so at this point, things look really good, right? Just kind of looking over here at this point, I want to just kind of ask myself, does it look consistent? Does it have a lot of fluff, or does it look consistent, like it'll run smooth? Everything looks pretty good. I love the energy count. Supporter line is a little bit thin, but that's kind of balanced out by the Ultra Balls, the Trainer's Mails, the Shaman, the Jirachi, the Hoopa. All of this has a lot of synergy with each other. So, yeah, it looks pretty good to me. I don't really see anything we have to give up or take out. We've got 3 spots left in the deck, so we can kind of splurge a little bit, add a few tech cards. When I think about being aggressive here, I want to do as much damage as possible. And one of the weaknesses I see here is that, Oblivion Wing's only doing 30. Not very much damage, right? Seismitoad's Quaking Punch is only doing 30. Again, not enough damage to really do much. Even Sky Return, if we had to use Sky Return is only doing 30 damage, which is really mediocre. So we need something to add damage to that. We want to make sure that we are doing enough damage here. So the great thing is that we do have Muscle Band. Muscle Band is awesome because it lets my attacks do 20 more. It doesn't cost me anything. I just attach it to the Pokemon and my attacks do 20 more. So Oblivion Wing can do 50, Quaking Punch can do 50, Sky Return can do 50. Yeah, you see where I'm going here. So I'm going to play a couple of those. They're not must-haves, but in this deck, they can kind of swing a lot of matchups and swing games for you. And that leaves us with a single card left in the deck. So at this point, it just kind of depends on what you want to do here. The deck is very consistent, but when I look at it, I'm thinking to myself, what happens if I get under a status condition? What happens if I'm put to sleep? What happens if I'm poisoned or something like that? And for that reason, you've got a couple options. You can play a Keldeo-EX. Keldeo-EX lets you rush and retreat, but it is going to kind of waste an attachment on Keldeo. You have to put an energy on Keldeo in order to use that ability. And it doesn't work with Dark Patch because Keldeo is a water type. So for that reason, I'm just going to put in a switch. You could either opt for Switch or Escape Rope. You could go something like AZ. But I think Switch is just very simple. Very, simple to the point, works well. So I'm going to add a Switch here. Alright, so, yeah, it doesn't really matter what artwork. We're just going to add this one right here. Looks like it's from maybe Boundaries Crossed, so that works. Alright, so we have our 60 card deck now. This is Yveltal-Archeops. Very fast, very consistent looking, but of course the last step is, playtesting. Always playtest it. Don't assume that the deck already works like it should. You may find that it's super clunky with lots of supporter draws. You may find yourself in a situation where you can't pull off the Archeops at all. You can't get the turn 1 Archeops from the Maxi because it's just really thin. It's really, inconsistent. So, with that said, with this list, which I think looks pretty good, we'll go ahead and jump into a game of Pokemon TCG Online that I played earlier. And yeah, we just want to go ahead and see how this deck performs. So this is the deck we just built. We'll go ahead and jump into Pokemon TCG Online, and yeah, we want to go ahead and see how the deck performs. So let's go ahead and jump into that now. All right, so it looks like we're playing against Slack Me Hoff. I'm going to go ahead and see if we go first. Looks like our opponent's probably going to go first here, and we'll see what we get. So let's see. Looks like we're gonna mulligan there. We just start off with Archeops, which is not a basic, but we do get an Yveltal right there, and that's a pretty good start. You know, we have an Ultra Ball. We can get rid of it, attach maybe Oblivion Wing on our turn. But we'll go ahead and get set up here. And okay, wow, it looks like our opponent is playing a Virizion Genesect deck. And that's going to be a little tougher to beat because, you know, our lasers aren't really going to have any effect. You know, Virizion-EX's Verdant Wind ability prevents any of the Pokemon that have grass energy on his side of the field to be damaged by, or to have status conditions. So I will wake up from that. I am just going to go ahead and attach for turn right there. You know, in this deck, I'm not, you know, against this deck, I'm not really sure if we need to actually, you know, pull off like a Maxie's Hidden Ball trick. Because, you know, really it looks like the only thing on their field is the Ariados. And it looks like they may play lasers regardless, so I don't think we really need to. So, I'm actually going to grab Shaman with this one. And I'm going to go ahead and Trainer's Mail. And let's see here. You know, what should I get here off of that Trainer's Mail? Looks like I had a couple options. I got a Lysander and a Laser. Yeah, I mean, I could get the Laser, put some early pressure on, or I could actually Lysander the Genesect since I know that's the threat on board. You know, once that thing comes out, it's going to be doing 200 damage with that G-Booster. So I go ahead and Lysander it up. I use the Shaman setup ability, draw 6, and I actually get a Hoopa-EX, so I can go ahead and get set up here. I'm going to get a number of different things here. I'm going to get the Darkrai and the Yveltals, so I'm going to go ahead and put those guys down just so I can go ahead and get set up there. And then, yeah, you know, I've got a pretty big decision here. Should I use that computer search to maybe search out like a laser or something to pressure my opponent? And I think that's what I'm going to do here, just because yeah, you know, Genesect is clearly the threat on board. You know, nothing else on his side of the board can really damage me that much. But Genesect's hitting for 200 damage if it gets set up. So I'm going to go ahead and Oblivion Wing for 50 plus poison. So it's going to be doing 80 on turn 1, which is pretty aggressive. Definitely doing its work, the strategy of this deck. And I get to attach an energy to Yveltal. So very good turn 1. The reason I didn't put down the second Yveltal is because I can always just Jirachi into Stellar Guidance and get a supporter. So maybe get like a Juniper or an N or something like that. But I didn't want to have to rely on top decking and energy. We do see Virizion use a long distance hypnosis that will put Hoopa to sleep. But thankfully we do wake up. And because I Lysander the Genesect, he actually had to waste an energy, and it kind of prevented him from using Emerald Slash. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the energy to Hoopa. That way I'll get to retreat out and probably Oblivion Wing again. I will go ahead and Jirachi Stellar Guidance. Alright, got a few different choices. Maxi clearly wouldn't work because we don't have the Archeops and it's not the only card in our hand. Could get the N to save the Yveltal, but that would actually net my opponent a couple extra cards. He would go from 4 to 6 cards. So I'm going to get the Juniper. You know, I've got some other attackers if need be, but I'm going to go ahead and get the Juniper. I get Dark Patch, so that's good. That's going to help me out in the next couple turns. I can go ahead and power up my Yveltal-EX right there. And then the question becomes, you know, should I go for the Evil Ball and do 100 or 90 after poison, or should I go for the Oblivion Wing? And I think I'm going to go for the Oblivion Wing because you know, Yveltal is a non-EX attacker, so even if he does knock me out, he still has to knock out 3 of my EXs. So I'm putting just enough pressure on there, you know, to make my opponent, you know, get set back just a little bit. So we're going to see what our opponent searches out for. They are going to use an Ultra Ball here. Probably going to get the Ariados. You know, if they don't have lasers, they're going to rely on that Ariados to add that residual poison damage. And since I did play a Verbank City Gym, it's going to be in his favor because that's always going to be an extra 30 damage between turns, which is pretty huge. So Virizion will get to pull off an Emerald Slash. Looks like it'll be doing 70 plus poison, so it's going to be doing more than enough to knock out Yveltal-EX. The good thing is that I can actually respond back here by probably knocking out that Virizion. You know, my Yveltal is completely powered up, so yeah, I think it'll be. I think it should be a pretty good turn. I'm gonna go ahead and use a Trainer's Mail. What I'm actually probably looking for here is like a Verse Seeker or like a Lysander or something. I would love to bring up that Genesect and knock it out, because even if I knock out Virizion with an X Ball, um, you know, he's just gonna follow up with a Genesect using that G booster, and at that point, you know, I can't really come back from that, right? I don't have any extra Pokemon to like come back from that. So thankfully, I do get the Trainer's Mount to the VS Seeker. I do have a Lysander in the discard, so I'll get to go ahead and Lysander up that Genesect and take that threat off the board. And the great thing is that even if he does put another Genesect on board, it's going to be a lot harder to knock me out, because the G Booster is an A spec, and really the only way to get it back is through like using Eco Arm or using you know, cards like that to get it back. Shadow Triad's also another example. But I will go ahead and Evil Ball here. I leave the energy on the Yveltal just in case I want to just kind of steamroll my opponent here if he tries to power something else up. But I can always Wise Cyclone if need be next turn. And so what's interesting here is if my opponent decides to Emerald Slash with the Virizion, you know, he's not going to knock me out, but I'll get to knock him out in the following turn because he only has, you know, 80 HP left or 90 HP left. So, yeah, you know, if he chooses to attack me, I'm basically going to get rewarded with 2 prizes. So my opponent has to make a pretty careful decision there. Interestingly enough, we do see a Sceptile-EX come down. Don't really see that a whole lot, but it's got that Unseen Claw attack, which has got a lot of synergy with Virizion, actually. You know, what that does is, I believe it does 60 by default. It is for a grass and a colorless, and if I am under a status condition, it does 70 more, so that's actually pretty big. But we are going to see what happens here. I do have a couple decisions to make. I am going to go ahead and battle compress some cards that I just don't really need in this matchup at the moment. You know, Archeops and Maxi, Seismitoad because it's weak to grass, so probably not a good Pokemon to play. So I'm going to get rid of those. And I'm actually going to go ahead and power up Darkrai because Darkrai is actually a pretty good attacker. You know, he hasn't seen a lot of love since you know, the 2012-2013 days when he first came out, but Darkrai, you know, with Dark Patch becomes a viable attacker, so it's worth playing that. I'm also going to go ahead and Dark Patch the Darkrai, so that way if I do get knocked out, I'll have a Pokemon that has 2 energy on it, so I'll be less reliant, and I can just go ahead and Night Spear if I get an energy. Alright. And since I am in a Wise Cyclone, going back to last turn, look at that. You know, Darkrai is completely powered up now if he decides to do something. I'll get 2 prizes, including a Shaman, which is pretty huge. That'll let me just pretty much clean out my hand and draw a fresh 6 next turn, and hopefully, you know, seal the game with like a Wise Cyclone or an Evil Ball on the Shaman or a Night Spear on the Shaman. You know, Shaman is an EX. You know, it's kind of like a liability towards the late game because it only has 110 HP. So it's definitely you know, a great card. I would certainly play a couple in every deck, but it is kind of in the same sense as Jirachi, kind of like a liability. So Sceptile is going to go ahead and knock us out here. It's doing plenty of damage, going to get the knockout. I'm going to go ahead and promote Darkrai. So what I'm looking for here is a Lysander or a Verse Seeker to get the Lysander. I'm not sure what's left in the deck, so you know, I really want to search through it. So I'm going to go ahead and discard a couple cards I don't need this turn. I'll probably end up taking the Seismitoad simply because I'm trying to thin my hand down. So I'll go ahead and take it. And I'm also going to go ahead and Acrobike here, and I get a Battle Compressor. Battle Compressor is going to be huge because that's going to let me thin my hand down even more, or my deck, I should say. So I can, you know, kind of look through my deck and see what needs to be discarded to maximize my chances of drawing what I need. So I'm just kind of slowly looking through the deck here. You know, these are just kind of little decisions that are, you know, a little tough to make because you if you whiff the energy or you whiff the Lysander, you're gonna kind of pay for it next turn. So I've got to be careful on what I choose here. So I am being a little slow picking, choosing my options here. But yeah, I'm just trying to maximize my chances of getting the VS Seeker or the Lysander. So cards like Acrobike, I don't want to discard because they might actually help me. Same way with Battle Compressor. Maybe I can Battle Compress some more stuff off the Shaman setup ability. So it is kind of a tough decision. Um, and yeah, I think those are probably the cards I'm going to go with. All right, I am going to go ahead and put down Seismitoad, and I'm going to go ahead and set up. So we're looking for a VS Seeker or a Lysander, and looks like we get both. So very awesome. I'll get to go ahead and Lysander the Shaman up. Um, I'll go ahead and attach a Muscle Band that puts me just in the range to knock it out. Hit 30 somewhere, doesn't really matter, but there we go. We go ahead and take the victory off of that. So Darkrai, definitely a strong attacker still, with the power of Dark Patch anyway. So yeah, as you can see, this Yveltal Archeops deck is very strong. We weren't able to really use the Maxi in this game, but the option was certainly there in the first couple turns. So I do think it's a very consistent list, very fast, aggressive list. So yeah, that should just kind of give you guys an idea of how I normally build my decks. Um, if there is a deck you guys want to see me play, or you want to see me kind of go through my mindset on how to build them, let me know, and I can certainly make some more videos in the near future with our Pro Deck Building 101 series. I do want to get that series established, continue doing those every week. But it's been a blast, guys. I've had so much fun recording this. I hope you found it useful. And yeah, I am Zach with Top Deck Nation, and I will catch you guys in the next one.